Welcome to FreightWaves Now, Tuesday edition style. It is so exciting that we have a new anchor here on staff. Emily Szink,
Yes.
welcome.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, a lot going on in terms of weather, so we're going to get right to that. We have Nick Austin. We are looking at yesterday, wild weather. It's severe weather season, so you kind of expect that. Lots of tornadoes, lots of flooding.
Right.
What's going on?
It's not unusual in the Great Plains to have tornadoes in May, but it was pretty unusual that the Storm Prediction Center yesterday issued a high risk for severe storms, which means a lot of widespread severe weather and widespread tornadoes. And that did happen yesterday. So there are officially about 25 to 30 tornado reports to the National Weather Service from northern Texas all the way up towards Tulsa, Oklahoma, and in the southwestern part of Missouri. So there were a lot of reports of hail and damaging winds. Thankfully, reports that I did not see were any reports of injuries or fatalities, so that's the good news.
Yeah, I saw in Kansas, eastern Kansas, actually, the wind was so powerful that a truck overturned, multiple trucks actually overturned. So basically, what wind speed does it have to be to overturn some type of vehicle? Or does it all depend?
Well, it depends on the size of the truck. It also depends on whether it's an empty van and they're deadheading or if it's a full load in there. Obviously, if they're deadheading, they're going to be a lot more at risk. If they're driving, a 53-footer, it could take winds of maybe only 50 or 60 miles an hour, possibly to blow it over if it's a crosswind. Usually, it takes winds a little bit stronger than that.
So if you're out there driving and there's any type of severe weather, you always want to make sure you know what the wind is going to be. And if it's feeling too windy, yeah, definitely.
And it doesn't take severe thunderstorms to make big winds. As a matter of fact, some parts of the Southwest today, from Southern California over into parts of Arizona and New Mexico, could see 60, 70 mile an hour wind gusts today, even though there won't be storms. It doesn't necessarily take thunderstorms to make big winds. And folks out in California, they definitely know that. They get Santa Ana winds kicking up sometimes when it's really, really hot and dry, and there are no thunderstorms around. So, but there's winter weather to talk about too.
It's crazy to think, yeah.
The juxtaposition,
it's so warm here, and then the winter weather's coming. A lot of snow, so you're talking about the summer, and you're talking about the tornadoes and the flooding, and then talking about snow. Where's the snow
in
happening?
one day? So out in parts of the Rockies, eastern Colorado, up into Wyoming, Montana, some parts of western Nebraska, and the plains as well. There will be pockets of heavy snow where some areas could see 6 inches to maybe a foot of snow. A lot of that, mostly in the high elevations of those areas, where there will be some assets at risk out there, mostly oil refineries is what we're talking about as far as assets that will be at risk from heavy snowfall, possibly some strong winds with this storm as well. Some areas out in California, Northern California and the Cascades, some parts of the Sierra Nevada, Cascades in Oregon, they're going to get some pockets of heavy snow as well. So yes, it's kind of like two seasons in one day.
A lot going on right now. Let's kind of work our way back east. The places that saw the flooding, and it's continuing to flood, and saw the hail, saw the severe weather and storms, anything predicted for today?
Well, the threat for severe weather is kind of shifting a little bit eastward through the afternoon today and into the evening. So as opposed to being out in Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, it's more in Arkansas, Missouri, so places like Little Rock, St. Louis, western parts of Illinois. Those are probably going to be the areas most prone to see severe storms today, and possibly some tornadoes. But the threat is not as high as it was yesterday, so that's the good news. But they still need to just don't let your guard down in those areas. There's still going to be the threat for some severe storms, possibly lingering into this evening. But then by the overnight hours, things are probably going to be really quiet.
Calm is good, especially
Calmer
after
is
you're getting flooding. And you always need to watch out because you never know how deep the water is. Don't drive through any of that stuff. And
that's a very good point. I mean, when we're talking about flash flooding from these storms, I mean, the water can rise so quickly, just in the matter of 30 or 40 minutes when you get these big thunderheads over you. And the thing about trying to drive through an area that looks like it's flooded, even if you're in a big rig, in a big truck, is that even if you think you might be able to make it through because the water doesn't look that deep to you, it's possible that the road is washing out under that water and you can't tell yet. So if you drive through there, you'll end up in a sinkhole. So it's not just because you might get washed away in the water if it starts moving too fast. but the road could be washed out. And so you don't want to try and drive through any area that's flooded, especially if it already has a barrier around it or a row closed sign. Just pay attention to those. Don't ignore those. They're
I know,
there for a reason.
everyone's on a schedule and they want to get somewhere, but yeah, this
Absolutely.
is life-saving information.
That's right. You want to get there safely.
Oh,
you and the load. You want to get everything there safely.
Yeah.
So one more quick thing on our critical events map.
Yeah, some more wild
Great
weather.
new feature
Yeah.
because a lot of the information on here is available worldwide. It's not just for the U.S. And we're heading into the Atlantic hurricane season. It officially doesn't start till June 1st, but we already have our first named storm of the season, subtropical storm Andrea, which is just kind of drifting out in the Atlantic right now. So it's not a direct threat to any assets. You know, maximum winds right now are only about 40 miles an hour. But folks up in the island of Bermuda out there in the Atlantic, storm's going to get a little closer to them in the next couple of days. So, you know, some high surf, possibly some rip currents. That's a dangerous thing. Obviously, you know, any ships that are out there possibly carrying cargo, they're going to try to avoid the storm. I'm sure they already know that it's out there, hopefully. And so it shouldn't, you know, really be a direct threat to any assets out there. But just interesting to note that we're getting a little bit of an early start already on the season. So we'll just keep an eye on this storm over the next few days.
Is that a
happens.
predictor for how severe the season will be if it starts earlier?
Not necessarily, but it is just interesting. You don't typically get a lot of storms starting before, you know, the official June 1st date, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be an extremely busy season. Right now, the latest outlook, which came out just a few weeks ago, it basically says about an average season as far as the number of named storms and major hurricanes. So hopefully that outlook won't change as we go through the season, but so it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be really busy, but we'll just have to keep our eye on it and see what happens.
Yeah, something to watch and something you'll continue to watch tomorrow. And thank you, Nick. And we have Zach and Chad are talking about changes in the market balance right now. So I know some interesting stuff going on.
Thanks, Emily. Pretty good inaugural debut right there, I have to say. Although, Zach, do you think that subtropical storm out there in the Sargasso Sea is really breaking news?
No, I don't even know why they named it. But
well, so says the junior meteorologist. Hey, it's great to have you on. We're talking about market balance. It was a crazy week last week, right?
Yeah, wild
Man,
ride.
what is happening right now?
So I pulled up the outbound tender market share map monthly change to put this into a long-term perspective. Monthly change is important just to see how the market has shifted over the last month. 30 days is enough to kind of run through a cycle of the freight markets and see significant pattern shifts. And you can see out here this
Month over month. This is an unusual chart to pull up, right?
Right over down here in the Southern California market, you see that they have lost a ton of market share over the last 28 days.
I have to think that this is the global thing happening.
We have to assume that the tariff pull forward and something's happening there regarding that, whether it's, you know, they've run out of steam or the ships have stopped coming into the port. I don't think the ships have stopped coming into the port, but
not completely.
Yeah, but you know, the big increase in the tariff rates and all that has to have some sort of impact on this market because that is what's been fueling the market over the last 6-7 months.
Yeah.
So we're seeing this kind of die down for now. Like, I don't know if it's a long run thing or not. Maybe it was just the timing's just appropriate with, you know, the tariff increases, and then, you know, all the ships were kind of running out of steam anyway. The port volumes had started to slow down.
It also like fuels a huge percentage of the country in general, right? Like 8% or how much?
8% market share in both of these markets right here. So, but all this freight eventually gets pushed into the rest of the country. The Savannah market out here also gets a lot of the volume now, but you've heard Henry Byers talk about the drought in the canal down there, so it's not necessarily going to make a lot of volume. A lot of volume can't get over here once that canal drought, you know.
Yeah, the Panama Canal
starts lowering its level.
There's been a 5-month drought.
Yeah, so that might be an impact, seeing that kind of turn back up again after the trips no longer can go through there. But another thing I wanted to point out is that you see these blues and these eastern markets start to show up. We've got, you know, Atlanta has gained a ton of market share, big market. Houston's gained a ton of market share, another huge market in the country. These are both, this is a top 2 market in the country. This is a top
5 or 6, yeah. And it's dried up in here a bit, which we think gave some opportunity to this area.
Right. But these shifting patterns are important to watch because all this capacity sitting out on the West Coast as carriers are moving this freight from out in Ontario, Los Angeles, going into Phoenix and all these other Western markets as they're repositioning the warehouse freight. So now all these other markets sitting out here are not going to have trucks available because these trucks are sitting out here not, they're servicing that freight, and then all of a sudden it drops off. If we go to the next, chart, again, the tree map.
Tree map.
Yeah, the colors are back. So
wow, it's very colorful.
Very colorful. So you see here, actually, yeah, Atlanta's the #1 market in the country right now.
Slight increase.
Day over day. So 4.47 of the total market share in terms of outbound volume coming from Atlanta. Ontario has dropped. It used to be up around 4.7%. It's dropped all the way down. So Ontario, the shift between Atlanta and Ontario is massive. Houston, you see that right there? 3% change day over day, 3.06% of the total market share. But also notice markets like New Jersey having big jumps, like Elizabeth, New Jersey, Newark, that area up there. There's a big port obviously in that region. Charlotte, North Carolina, Dallas, a lot of East Coast cities starting to show up in terms of bigger market share values.
Yeah.
Salt Lake and Denver, day over day have come up a little bit, but overall, if we pulled up a chart of that, they're actually kind of trending down as well. So the West Coast is starting to cool off a little bit, where the East Coast is starting to get a little bit stronger. If we go to the OTVI Ontario versus Atlanta chart and pull that up, this will make it real prominent here. So
looking at volumes coming out of that LA area,
yeah, Ontario. You saw Ontario on the tree map, second biggest market in the country, has been the first biggest, the largest market in the country, if you will. You see that it was really outpacing Atlanta until just recently, when Atlanta just shot up. And
yeah, that is Atlanta. Yes.
Yeah, Atlanta shot up. Ontario dropped off the market.
Wow, Atlanta taking the lead.
Yeah, shooting up while Ontario dropping off. So these two markets are changing positions. It's a big shift in dynamic in the freight market, and we don't know if it's going to continue. So if we go to the next chart, pulling up, I'm going to steal Henry Byer's thunder a little bit by talking about the maritime situation. So we've got the Freightos Baltic Exchange daily index rate, measuring the spot market rate for a 40-foot container from China to North America's west coast down here and North America's east coast up here. So think Los Angeles down here, Savannah, Newark up here. These rates they're not really taking off. You see how they're kind of sliding down. This rate is actually getting a little bit higher. We think a lot of that has to do with the canal and the demand. They're just simply not going to have as much capacity coming to the East Coast from China in the next bit. So that's staying a little bit higher. So the spread between these two is getting larger, making it more expensive to get to the East Coast versus the West. The West Coast is starting to slide down still. This is a daily rate. So these rates are starting to, taper off as we enter in the summer, which is it should be this time last year, rates were starting to really pick up. This year it's not.
I thought you were going to say that, in terms of finding balance, that the volumes were increasing again here at the top of the week. Not seeing that. Still seeing the fall off in volumes.
Yeah, well, overall, the volumes are starting to recover a little bit from last week. But think again, you've had two of the biggest markets in the country really drop off over the last week or so. And they command 8% market share, and now they command about 7% market share versus 8. So that's going to pull the national volumes down, but Atlanta isn't picking up. Other markets aren't picking up enough slack to make those volumes really take off in the rest of the country.
We'll see what the developing situation is with volumes and what that might mean for rates as well. Thank you, Zach Strickland, for bringing it to us hot here, attacking Tuesday the way that he does. And it was wonderful to have our very inaugural debut of my co-host and an anchor, Emily Szink, here joining us. Boy, that was a very colorful display there on the weather with Nick Austin. So thanks to everybody for putting this together. Robbie Crossland driving that train. Behind the scenes, Jonathan Smith on camera. Thanks, guys. And hey, we are coming to you live each and every business day at 4 p.m. Eastern. You know where to find us, but share the love on social media whenever you can, because hey, transparency, we are not behind the wall. We will never be behind the wall. We are sharing the love, and we would like for you to share the love too, because the more people to play the game, the better we all are, right? Anyway, thanks for tuning in. We will see you soon. If you want a sonar demo, of course, check out freightwaves.com/sonar. And in the meantime, don't worry, be happy.